Welcome to One Shot D&D. My name is Judah, and I am a huge nerd. I've been a DM for 7 years, and I've been running multiple campaigns and one-shots during that time. I collect swords, Magic the Gathering cards, I collect and paint the miniatures I use for my campaigns. I even bought my wedding ring from Jens Hansen and rewrote the elven script on the One Ring to be a poem for my wife, because I love Lord of the Rings a bit too much. As much as I love D&D and creating worlds for my players to explore, I have a full-time job, which makes scheduling regular D&D sessions very difficult. I made this podcast for us, for the people who don't have time to sit down for hours playing D&D, for the people who don't want to spend hundreds on dice and miniatures and rule books. I made this podcast to help us rediscover our love for tabletop role-playing. In this episode, I'll briefly explain what D&D is, how to create your first character, and what all the different dice rolls and numbers mean, so that you'll be ready to play D&D in no time at all. You might be wondering, what is D&D? Well, Dungeons & Dragons was created by Ernest Gary Gygax and David Arneson in 1974. It quickly gained popularity and grew into the global phenomena we know today. The game has changed so much since then and has undergone multiple revisions. For the most part, I'll stick to the 5th edition of D&D, commonly referred to as D&D 5e. Wizards of the Coast bought the rights to D&D in 1977 and have worked very hard to make the game more accessible to the general public with each new edition. Thanks to their hard work, D&D 5e has gained popularity in mainstream media. Wizards of the Coast also own a website called D&D Beyond, which helps new and veteran players create their character sheets, manage campaigns, build encounters, and access all their digital versions of the core books. Let's go through the process of making a character on D&D Beyond. Let's say you want to create a character, but you don't know where to start. Let's just go for the standard option on the website. It'll take you through a step-by-step process so that you don't get overwhelmed with all the available choices. The first step is choosing your class. This will determine how you fight, whether you're a magic-wielding wizard, carefully casting spells, or a bloodthirsty barbarian running headfirst into combat. Have a read through all the classes and choose the one that appeals to you. Next is your background. Here, you get to name your hero and describe their physical characteristics like eye color and how long their hair is. Once you've done that, we can move on to species or races. There is a plethora of species to choose from, with each race having their own pros and cons and ability score buffs. Some races, like the High Elves, are great for wizard characters due to their already high intelligence. Take Lord Elrond or Galadriel, for example. But in saying that, this is your character, so have fun with it and make something that you're actually going to enjoy playing. You don't have to optimize your character to have fun. D&D is about collaborative storytelling. It's not about winning. Following that, you get to assign your abilities. I prefer to roll for my abilities, but to make it simple, you can choose the point buy method, which gives you 27 points to assign however you see fit. So, if you want to put 20 points into strength and dump your wisdom to 8 overall, that's perfectly fine. But having a bit of intelligence might come in handy when your party investigates a crime scene, for example. Lastly, you can equip your character with basic weapons and armor. D&D Beyond will automatically suggest equipment based on your class, but if you really want your monk to dual wield a pair of crossbows, you can choose that as long as your character is proficient with that item. And once you've kitted out your character, you are ready for your next adventure. Now you have several sheets of paper with words and numbers next to them, and you have no idea if you're looking at your next algebra exam or the Codex Astartes. So let's simplify it. There are 6 main skills, and they determine how good your character is in performing tasks associated with that skill. Strength determines how hard you hit. Dexterity is your character's ability to be nimble. Constitution represents your character's stamina. Intelligence scores indicate how book smart or religious your character is, whereas wisdom determines how street smart your hero is. And lastly, charisma is your ability to talk yourself out of a very sticky situation. For each action you take, there is a check or saving throw linked to it. You do this by rolling a d20 and adding the number associated with that roll. Saving throws are often used when trying to resist a spell or avoiding a dangerous trap. Skill checks are linked to specific actions. For example, let's say the rogue wants to pick a lock and then sneak inside without being noticed. The DM would most likely ask them to roll a sleight of hand check first to successfully pick the lock, followed up by a stealth check to sneak inside. To successfully perform an action, you need to pass a difficulty check, otherwise known as a DC. So, if the DC to pick the lock is 16 and you roll a 13 on your dice, you would then add the number next to sleight of hand to see if you beat the DC of 16. Now, let's talk about combat. To start an encounter, you'll need to roll initiative. This determines the order in which you'll fight. When it's your turn, you'll typically have 3 choices. You have 1 action, 1 bonus action, and you can also move your character on the map according to whatever their walking speed is. With an action, you can choose to swing at your opponent multiple times if your class allows it, but if you're a spellcaster, you can typically only cast 1 spell using your action. For your bonus action, your class may grant you the ability to perform certain actions. For example, a barbarian can use their bonus action to rage before they use their action to attack. To successfully attack an enemy, all you need to do is roll a d20 and add the modifier next to the weapon you attacked with. As long as that number either matches their armor class or is higher than their armor class, that attack counts as a successful hit. Once you hit, you roll the dice according to the weapon you are using. For example, a dagger is a d4, so you would roll a 4-sided die and add the damage bonus to whatever you rolled. So if I rolled a 2 on the die and I add 3 to the weapon damage, I hit for a total of 5 points of damage. As a spellcaster, the spell you cast determines who needs to roll. If the spell has a hit modifier, you'll need to roll a d20 and beat your enemy's armor class. But if the spell has a save DC, that means the enemy has to roll a saving throw to not be affected by your spell. That might seem like a lot to take in. Honestly, I get it. All the different dice and checks and spells, they can seem very overwhelming. But once you grasp the concept of rolling and adding numbers, the rest becomes super easy. I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode. It truly means a lot to me. I want this podcast to be a place where I get to hang out with my friends and share that joy with the rest of the world. So I look forward to being your DM in the future. If you like what you heard, then please take a moment and leave this show a review and share it with all your friends. I want to keep this podcast completely ad-free so that you get a totally uninterrupted experience. If you do want to help this show, I'll have a link to my Patreon where you can listen to additional episodes with each guest, join the community chat, and even download a PDF version of all the adventures I create for each episode. And that is where we'll end this session. I hope you had fun, and I'll see you in the next episode.